you. Ambassador Guillermo
Ryshinsky.
Thank you very much, sir. Canada's ambassador and permanent representative of Canada to the United Nations. The website canadainternational.gc.ca. And Ambassador, thank you for joining us today.
Well, my pleasure, Tom.
Thank you so much. Tell us, what are you up to now? And how is the relationship between Canada and the United States doing?
Well, Canada and the U.S., I mean, we share the North American geography. I don't think there's a relationship that's closer, but that doesn't mean that we see every issue absolutely the same way. We have, at times, divergent points of view on certain issues. I guess the one that's been in the news most of recent days has been issues associated with the XL Keystone Pipeline. But by and large, the border between Canada and the United States is the largest undefended border on the planet. And I would say that while we are similar, we're very different societies in some way, but we respect each other and we engage in constructive discussion to try to resolve issues that come up from time to time. But on the international dimension, I think we work extremely closely in a very coordinated fashion in terms of being able to address some of the major issues that are out there right now.
As Canada's ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations, in the context of the United Nations, what do you see as the biggest issues that the world is facing right now that we all need to be talking about?
Well, we're in a period of time where we're seeing change everywhere in the world, and that change also impacts on things like the way conflict takes place today in the world versus what transpired 50, 60 years ago. In the past, nation states engaged in conflict at times against each other. What we're seeing now more and more is intranational conflict, the implosion of states, the proliferation of non-state actors, if you will, as the major purveyors of violence and conflict. And this has resulted in the United Nations having to shift its orientation a little bit, because it's no longer about keeping peace between warring national armies, but it's more about projecting an ability to diffuse conflict within a country where groups or certain interests may be trying to impose their will on others. And we have legion examples in Africa, in Syria, and now in Iraq as well. And so the UN, I think, is being tested in terms of its ability to redefine itself and the role that it's going to play as a mediator and as a conflict preventer on the one hand, but also in response to conflict, what we can do to ensure that we move to a stabilization of situations so that the building of durable peace and the institutions required in societies can be done in an effective fashion.
What does that look like?
It looks messy at times, to be absolutely frank, because it requires a willingness on the part of actors, some of them with their own agendas, to come together and find reasonable accommodation from the point of view of a way forward. And what it means for the United Nations, I think, is a need to bring the entirety of its toolkit, from its humanitarian assistance to its peacekeeping dimensions to its development programming, in a very, very concerted way, and work as one in order to ensure that the foundations can be created in a post-conflict scenario, that people see improvement in their lives, they see security in their lives, and an ability to project a vision of a better life for themselves and for their children.
Then when Saddam Hussein, and feel free to tell me if this is not your area of concern or expertise and you want to move on to something else, but when Saddam Hussein was running Iraq, he was doing it via an agency called the Ba'athist Party, which used to be referred to as the Ba'athist Socialist Party. And the Ba'athist Party philosophy and commitment was not to any particular sect, and not even necessarily to Islam, but there were Christian Ba'athists and Jewish Ba'athists. Certainly the Alawite Ba'athist up in Syria, Saddam Hussein was a Sunni Ba'athist. That party or that institution kind of filled up all the space, and when that was taken down, I mean, the first thing that Paul Bremer did was, when he went over to Iraq after we overthrew the Saddam Hussein government, was to dissolve the army, because everybody in the army had to be a member of the Ba'athist Party, and to dissolve the state-controlled enterprises, and drop the corporate tax rate to 15%, and do away with all tariffs, and basically all government regulation on business, in the belief that this would lead to instantly a Milton Friedman-esque libertarian paradise, that business would step in to the vacuum created by the vanishing Ba'athist Party. Instead, sectarianism stepped in. Any thoughts on A, my narrative, and or its accuracy or inaccuracy, and B, what we do from here?
Well, look, I mean, in terms of American policy in Iraq, I don't think it's my place to comment on that. But I think Iraq, under Saddam Hussein, was an example of a very brutal dictatorship that used its assets to basically keep a population under its control through repression, through fear, through selective assassination and imprisonment of any opponents. And what it did over a period of time was in essence, to take up all that space, as you said. And all of the issues that had been there beneath the surface, they never disappeared. They just kind of lay dormant for a while. With the disappearance of that, you've seen a resurgence of these kinds of issues that were always part of the reality on the ground in that country far before Saddam Hussein ever came into power. And now we're reaping the whirlwind of that. I think part of what we need to do when we look at post-conflict situations around the world is ensure that local institutions, which people understand, which people respect, which people have confidence in, are the ones that carry the ball forward, if you will, in terms of creating a new reality that can be shared by citizens. And if citizens don't see themselves in that reality, see themselves as excluded, see themselves as victims, yet again, coming out of a conflict situation or the fall of a dictator, then you have to deal with the consequences.
Hang on just a second.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
Sorry, that guy always steps on us. Ambassador Guillermo Ryshinsky, Canada's ambassador and permanent representative to the UN. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome, Tom. Thanks very much.